Hey, Sean, I've been podcasting. I've got the Colonel Sean podcast, which I don't update that frequently, but David and I have been doing the Hardy & Sons podcast. And I keep having people ask me, like, what is my podcast setup? Or to ask, like, how can you just do a podcast? But as a video producer, I had a lot of the gear already, and I didn't have to do that much differently to start doing podcasts with my video gear. That said, you can tweak some little pieces of my equipment. I'm gonna give you all of my equipment that I use to do podcasts, as well as my workflow for what I do once I've recorded them to get them from the audio recorder to the internet and to distribution. So for an audio recorder, I use the Zoom F4. It's a pretty beefy audio recorder. It's for like film and production. It's a 4-channel recorder. It has a ton of features that podcasting will never use. It will never take full advantage of. I used to podcast using a Zoom H6, and before that using a Zoom H4n. Any of these are decent, and in fact, really any audio recorder, anything you can plug a microphone into will do a good job. And if you don't have gear, you can still record into your phone. When we were in Africa in November, we had talked about doing a podcast, but not wanting to bring all of the gear out into the African bush. And so we thought, just our iPhones. Your iPhone has a great microphone in it. You can use that to record. Don't let not having the right gear stop you from doing your podcast. So I use the Zoom F4, and I've used other Zoom products. The microphones that I use, so a lot of people will use, like this is an Audio-Technica 2020, AT2020. And microphones like this look cool and they feel official and they can get a beautiful sound. But a lot of times they're overkill, and especially if whoever you're podcasting with, if you have a guest on or something like that, if somebody isn't used to using a microphone like this, it can end up sounding bad because these microphones are very sensitive to proximity. So if somebody leans a little bit away or a little closer, especially the amount of bass in their voice can go way up or come way down, and then you've got this inconsistent audio. So what I use, which gets great audio, is dynamic microphones. I love these Rode M1s. They have no switch, they have no anything, there's nothing somebody can bump and ruin. They just work. And they're more tolerant for distance away from your face. Yeah, they lose a little bit of bass, but also when someone's holding it, they tend to hold it more consistently than they would like standing perfectly still in front of this, because it allows them to sway a little bit and their mic can move with their body. So I use these dynamic microphones, and I find that my guests always use them better than they would use a condenser microphone or a side address microphone like this. So I record using an M1. If I have more than 2 people, I have 2 M1s. If I have more than 2 people, I have a Shure SM58 and some Sennheiser dynamic vocal microphone. I don't know the numbers on that, but these are the microphones that I typically give when I'm doing podcasts with other people. If I am podcasting on my own, I will use something like the AT2020, but for the most part, these do the job incredibly well. And actually, they sort of help with something that we'll get to in the last part of this. But after I've recorded, I've sat down, I've recorded, I try to do my podcasts where I'm not going to edit them, because I find that it's just tedious, and if you take out the ums, the ers, and the ahs, it just takes way too long. And I would rather make something, record it, have it be more authentic, and then present that to people rather than spending an hour or 2 editing these things. So when I edit, I use Logic Pro X, and the reason I use this program, it's a bit more expensive, but I have it already because I've done audio engineering and I use it for Final Cut, and I use it for other video production stuff. There are other softwares, even GarageBand will do a good job. You can use Final Cut or Premiere or Adobe Audition. You can use a lot of different tools to edit. The main thing I do when I'm editing is make 3 little tweaks. First of all, I apply a compressor to the audio. Now what a compressor does is it takes the quieter parts of the audio and makes them louder, and it brings the louder parts and makes them a little quieter, so everything's about consistent. And that's how we fix a little bit of the proximity as someone's talking. If they get a little quieter, the software is going to fix that. Secondly, I apply a limiter, which just makes it so that if somebody pops they get an S or a P into the microphone that spikes the speakers, limiter will make sure that it's not going to blow out your listeners' speakers. And thirdly, I apply an EQ. And a lot of people listen to podcasts in their car, and the rumble of their car or a treadmill or any number of things, if your podcast has this rich, low tone to it, you're gonna end up losing some of the articulation when someone's listening in a car, and you don't want to be in the same frequency that their car is making or that the treadmill's making or whatever's making. So if you actually bring the bass down a little bit and make it not tinnier, but bring the higher frequencies to the foreground, it's going to be a lot easier to understand and listen to. And if you listen to like NPR, they do this with all of their audio, and that's why it sounds so crisp and clear. So those are the 3 little changes I make, and then I upload everything to Simplecast.com, which is a great little platform for distribution, and then from there where I upload the files, I can add it to iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify, wherever, and it's that simple. So that's the whole thing. That's the gear I use to sit down and do the audio. This is the software I put it into, the 3 effects that I apply, and then where I put it for distribution. There are a ton of other places to put it for distribution, a ton of other software, and a ton of other audio recorders. This is what I use, and it works fantastically for me because a lot of this equipment I already had. But you can find a solution that works for you. And if you have any questions, if you want to ask me anything that I may have tried and rejected in the past, feel free to throw something in the comments. Other than that, thanks for watching. See you later. Oh, didn't see it there. How's that for the intro?
Good.
How many minutes of outtakes do you want to do?
2.
2 minutes of outtakes? Okay. Hey, Sean.